as you let people in, maybe just tell them that we're just getting started, and if they miss something, we can certainly circle back to that. But we've got quite a contingent. I see 22 people on the line, so I think it's great to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Melissa West. I am working with Impact 100 in the capacity of a volunteer to support the grants leadership team. I am going to have Anna Graves tell you a little bit about why she and her co-founder founded Impact 100 in just a moment. But I first just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I know working at a nonprofit in my day job, how hard it is to take the time out to actually make time to apply for money, to run your very worthy organizations, and that this is probably about the least favorite part of your job. So our goal is to make it a little less painful for you, and hopefully the application process that we put together is not a painful one as far as grant applications go, but you'll tell us after that you've had a chance to look at it, I'm sure. And I'm just going to start by saying we're going to cover three things. We're going to cover why Seattle Impact 100 was founded, which I mentioned Anna Graves is going to give us a little bit of an intro there. I'm going to talk a bit about the principles, approach, and structure of our grant making and the application at a very high level. I assume most of you have had a chance to look at it. If you haven't, that's okay. And then we're going to turn to Q&A. So it'll be, roughly 12 to 15 minutes of content, and the rest is questions from you. We are recording this, and we'll post it on the website in case you miss anything and want to come back to it. And we'll also be updating our Q&A online. So with that, can I hand it over to you, Anna, to just share a brief bit about why you decided to found Impact 100 Seattle?
Absolutely. Thanks, Melissa. And thank you all so much for joining us. As Melissa said, we know that your day is very busy, and we really appreciate that you're here with us. So myself and my co-founder, Jeanette, who I believe is also on the call. Hi, Anne. We heard about the concept of Impact 100 from the East Coast, actually. A friend of mine started Impact 100 Jersey Coast. And we love the simplicity of it. It's 100 women at least coming together and really amplifying their impact, amplifying what they can do in the community. Now, when we started thinking about starting Impact 100 Seattle, we talked to a lot of people, and actually Melissa was one of the first people that we spoke to. We told her about the concept, and she basically just blew it apart. She said, I love what you're trying to do together. I love what you're trying to do to bring women together, to have an impact, but we have to do it in a different way. We have to do it as partners to the nonprofits, not as people trying to save them, because really we're not the ones saving our communities, you guys are. And so that's really how we started approaching Impact 100 Seattle, trying to think about what are some of the ways that we can make the application process easier, better for the nonprofits, what we can do during the process to take some of the burden off of you and onto us. And then after the grants are given, what can we do to continue to support our grantee partners, work with them, make connections, introductions, and continue to support them to grow our partnership together. And so that's really what Impact 100 is. And we know that collective giving organizations are not unique, but we do hope that the experience that you have with us will be different. And if it's not, you need to tell us. We really believe in evolving our organization. Some of you I see on this call applied last year, and I think you will see that we've made changes to the application process, and some of the changes that we've made were directly related to the feedback that we've received. So please keep it coming, keep the feedback, good, bad, and the ugly. We do really want to hear it, because we want to make this process as best as it can be for all of our partners. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much. Sorry, struggling with mute. That's a first. Just kidding. Okay, so where we started last year when this concept came together was pre-COVID, just to be clear. We had started early on by assembling a group of women who were interested in this concept and saying, okay, how are we going to do this differently? And the one thing that we did, I think that really helped gel this concept was put together some principles. You can see them here. You may have seen them on the website. There are 4 of them, and they've stayed largely the same since the organization kind of came to be last year. And we gave our first grants in April, May, June of last year. So one was this idea, which I'm sure many of you are following, is trust-based philanthropy, starting with unrestricted grants, but really helping to do what we can to move power toward those closest to the community while reducing the burden on the application and on the organization side. We're not all the way there. We know we have a long way to go. There are lots of things that I think we would like to see in the future, and we're taking as many steps as we can as this is a new organization to work toward a trust-based philanthropy model. So encourage you to, again, please continue to give us feedback on that. The second thing was really that while we know there's so many amazing organizations, we had to narrow it somehow. And so we decided that we wanted to look at those organizations who are supporting transformative change. So really those that are looking at not just addressing a social issue, but some of the root causes of those issues. And I lead an advocacy team, again, for an international NGO. I think this is something that I feel passionately about and I think is underinvested in as a in global social change, but also in our community. So what are some of these issues that may be impacting people, and how can we address the root causes of those? So that's one thing that we decided that we would like to try to act together toward. We want to be risk takers, so we're not necessarily worried how long an organization's been around or kind of if they're doing something that's really novel. I think that's good. So we're really trying to encourage new ways of thinking and acting, and that includes how we work together as a team and with all of you as well. And then the fourth one is around listening, learning, and evolving. And I think we added the listen after last year. I felt like we made some mistakes. We were on a learning journey, and one of the things that we implemented pretty quickly was this rapid feedback, both for the women that are interested in learning about how to be better philanthropists, as well as the organizations that we were working with. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were sending out surveys and getting input. And I know that you can't participate in all the surveys. Again, if we send you one, we won't be offended if you don't respond, but I think those of you who apply, we would love to hear about that process and how we can make it even easier next year. Okay, so I think, again, most of you are aware traditional grant making can be burdensome. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but we are really trying to have a short, easy to complete application. We have no character limits. For example, you can cut and paste from other grant applications. Again, having been through this both on the funder side as well as on the NGO side, I think we thought about the ways that we can do this as quickly as possible. We also want to let you know quickly so that you're not hanging in terms of knowing when you're going to get funding. So we'll share with you the dates in a moment, but really trying to get from application to award within 3 months. Unrestricted funds, there really is no limit to how the funds can be used. The grant agreement has very limited information in it. It's basically saying we're giving you money. And then we want to support organizations that we both get to know through this process as well as fund. So we have a growing network. It's still young as an organization, but we hope to continue to get people interested in how they can become more involved in philanthropy, and through the Impact 100 Seattle model specifically, to both support organizations that we've given funding to formally, as well as those that we just got to know through this process. So if you haven't followed us on Twitter or Instagram, please take a look, and you can see how we profiled other organizations. So very quickly last year, we did expedite our timeline due to COVID. We decided it wasn't going to be used to anyone if we had funding that we were sitting on. So we wanted to get that out to the community as quickly as possible. And while our initial model had been to give one larger grant and a couple of very kind of smaller grants, we ended up giving multiple grants to 5 organizations instead of one larger grant. So you can see the 5 organizations here. We had 67 organizations apply last year. About 10 of those were not eligible based on criteria. And again, our fault. We take responsibility for why that was unclear and tried to make our application a bit clearer this year. So here's the application criteria. Again, just very briefly, assuming you've taken at least a cursory glance at this, is your revenue under 2 million for the most recent fiscal or calendar year? I think this is an outdated screenshot, so bear with me there. Are you 501c3 or fiscally sponsored? Do you conduct majority of your work and or services in the Puget Sound area? Is your organization's primary purpose religious or politically partisan? That is something that we are not doing this year. And then is your organization solely focused on direct services? And if you do have an organization that's solely focused on direct services, would love to hear more about how we can support you, but that is likely not an area that we will be funding. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware as you're going through this process. I think the application will not allow you to move forward if you don't answer these questions based on the criteria that we've set. Okay, I think I have one last slide before the timeline, which is the principle-based criteria. So these are organizations, so you'll see some of this threaded in the questions that we're asking. So underserved populations, reducing inequities, addressing root causes of the problem, again, back in line with our principles of grant making. Community-based organizations, so those that are created by and run by people from the communities you're serving, and organizations with a leadership and board that reflect this community. So those are some of the things that we're going to be thinking about as we look at organizations who do apply. Great, so the dates are April 3rd at 9 p.m. Pacific time. The applications will close. We will provide an update by May 4th to all of the organizations that have applied. We'll have a short list of potential partners by June 7th, and we'll let you know who those are. I have found that it's very helpful to better understand kind of which organizations funders do work with. Again, on the recipient side of this, I think it's always disheartening to not find out anything or to never find out who was actually funded. And we try to be really transparent and post as much information about both the process and the outcomes on our website. So if you're ever unsure, please email us and we can send you the latest as well. And then June 21st, we're going to have an annual meeting, and that's when the organization, so the way that it works is we'll have likely a few organizations go to the annual meeting, and we typically, well, we've had one year, and last year we had a member present an organization and share a little bit about that organization, and then the members who comprise Impact 100, so the 100 plus women who comprise Impact 100 will select the organization that they think best matches our principles and process and approach that we've outlined. And then the final organization that receives the majority will receive the largest grant, and then the other two will receive smaller grants. So that is the process and the timeline. And I'm going to take this off the screen for a moment just so we can see faces and have a chance to dialogue on the Q&A, but please send any questions that you have to this email address, grants@impact100seattle.org. And on the website, you go to the For Nonprofits tab in order to access specific information about the application and any of the questions that you may have as you're going through that process. You can download it in advance if you want to complete it offline, and it's easier to cut and paste, those sorts of things. So we've tried to think of the little things that might make it easier for you. So I'm going to stop there, and now it's going to be your turn to talk and answer questions. And I have a couple colleagues on the call as well from the Impact 100 Seattle team who will be helping me answer questions. So if you haven't introduced yourself yet and you get a question, can you just please say your name and your role with the Impact 100 Seattle group. And just in case it wasn't clear, we're an all volunteer organization and all very interested in helping women in particular be better philanthropists and more connected to the community. So I think I forgot to say that at the beginning, but also an important part of why we do this work and why I do this work personally. So thank you, and I'm gonna stop sharing. All right. So feel free to put questions in the chat or just come off mute and share if you prefer to do that.
Hi, I'll start. My name is Abril Mitchell Ward, and I am here today. We have a new nonprofit called Kyrie's House Foundation. We derived it. We lost my nephew last year from a drunk driving accident at the age of 25, and he left behind 2 boys. And we just want to support. We found that the organization was founded by my sister, and we just want to basically support our community through any tragedy that they faced. As far as with COVID-19, with gunplay, DUIs, just any tragedy that's been faced that has left a family needing support. Are those things that are too specific to apply for the grant? Or can you give us some tips on how we can be best successful at that grant application to possibly be chosen? And thank you for this platform also.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really sorry to hear about your loss. That's tragic. And obviously, families need a safety net to be able to get through times like that, especially now. Okay, how to best answer that? I think it's hard for me to say without seeing the specifics of how you're framing your organization.
Okay.
I do think that the way that we're talking about some of the longer term changes, we believe so that the direct services that organizations are providing to individuals and families and communities are critical, and they have to be a part of the solution for sure. I think where we're trying to focus is on how do we help spark some of the longer term change that's needed as well. And so organizations that are thinking about, okay, so how do you take a situation and prevent this from happening in the future and those sorts of things. So I don't want to say yes or no, but those are some of the types of things that we would be thinking about.
I appreciate that feedback. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Melissa, thank you so much for sharing all that you did. My name is Ndudi Chukwu. I'm with Mission Africa. My question is, I don't know, maybe you said it and I missed it. So how many organizations in all are you going to fund this year?
Yeah, Anna, do you want to take that? I think I'm going to pass that one to you.
Sure. Thanks, Melissa. So this year, I mean, we never say we'll fund exactly X number of organizations because I think that there's still a lot of moving pieces. We hope to narrow it down to probably around 3 that we will fund, and one of those organizations is going to receive a larger grant. We hope it's going to be around $100,000, but it all depends on how many members we're able to recruit for this granting season. And so, ideally we'd have one $100,000 grant. Now that grant is to be paid out in 1 to 3 years, depending on what the organization needs. We know that a lot of the organizations that are applying are smaller, and it wouldn't really benefit them to take in $100,000 all at once. And so we will work with the organization that receives the large grants to see what type of a payout period is the best for them. Now, the payout period is now going to depend on, reporting on meeting any stipulations. So the money is yours, but we do understand that, again, not everybody can absorb $100,000 right away. And then the other organizations that we would say are the finalists will receive smaller donations. Let's say we have 120 members, it would probably be $10,000 each. All of those numbers, we want to make sure that nobody out of that group walks away empty-handed. So we'll have to flex a little bit and sort of adjust and, go with the flow. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Good morning. I'm Janice Clark, and I'm here partnering certainly with my sister, one of my best friends in Duty Chuka with Mission Africa. And our relationship started about maybe 10, 12 years ago in Duty when she first became an NGO in Nigeria. And we have a distinct opportunity now to work together in King County. I'm also working in Pierce County, but certainly in King County around marijuana prevention for kids. And we use the videos and the PSAs as hooks to get the kids in. So we really can deal with those things that you just talked about, the systemic racism, systemic or marginalized historically in certainly African Americans. But we also need to keep in mind that we have, I call them, and they're not offended when I say this, fresh Africans, where now these children too are for the first time experiencing the racism in the United States of America. So even though Mission Africa is largely now in like 12 or 13 countries, started out in just one, she do tremendous work in Seattle, King County. And I'm so happy to partner with her. We're partnering on another grant opportunity with the health department on marijuana prevention, but certainly when we talk about, and you talk about, and I think you're spot on when you say, getting at the root causes of some of these things. I have a sad story. I don't want it to be sad, but my brother in South Carolina, my last living sibling, died of COVID-19. And so as much as the research is saying it doesn't affect the children as much as it affects older adults, but those children can be silent carriers. And it is important that those children get information about the COVID and the vaccines, if possible, if the parents say so. So I'm excited about Impact 100. I'm just starting to learn about you guys and what you're doing. Largely my work, my nonprofit, 25 years been in Pierce County largely, but I'm so excited. I'm loving what I'm hearing about your learning journey and listening and learning. And my final edit, I would like to say, is to Anna. Yes, we certainly can appreciate the fact that there's some nonprofits who cannot absorb $100,000 in one shot. But one of the things that we changed the game in Pierce County Health Department, it is an equity issue. When you are smaller and you do big work, then it requires many hands, makes the work light. And so infusion up front, well, they had never done it before, but infusion a certain amount up front to start the work, because normally it's been, you do the work 30 days, 60 days, you can hope for a paycheck. And so they changed the game that way. And so I would just want to offer that perhaps whoever the successful awardee is with the larger grant, that that organization may have some opportunity for larger infusing of cash up front to be able to support the work that will come in the 1 to 3 years. So thank you for allowing me this space.
Thanks so much, Janice, for sharing your input and feedback and love of In Duty.
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Garcia. My organization is Mujer Albulante. That means women driving. We're a nonprofit, fiscal sponsored organization based in Seattle and Federal Way. And we help immigrant and refugee women to obtain the driving and driving permit, driver license in order to become independent and self-sustainable. There is a huge need between immigrant and refugee women, you know, when they arrive, especially to the Puget Sound area, that the lack of bus routes and transportation issues are affecting deeply to immigrant and refugee women, especially mothers. When you are non-driving, you are not able to work or study because public transportation is challenging. My organization is focusing into help those women to obtain the driver permit and later the driver license without any fee. Because we understand that a low-income immigrant refugee families, they are not able to pay for the driving classes are super expensive. And I want to thank you for your criteria to applying for this grant, and I think your effort is changing the culture about only the bigger nonprofits with professional grant writers are getting traditional funding from agencies, from government, from foundations, but this is exactly what we need in the area, a support directly for the grassroots and small organizations like us, because that's making the difference. And I spent 7 years working in a totally volunteer basis for the for our organization until last year that I got my first payment, and it was, yeah. And those are the stories of many leaders of color, of many people that are directly impacted. So this organization is founded based on my own experience as an immigrant arriving to the area, not afraid to driving. So I decided to help other women, and we are been serving 500 women since 2014 with very limited resources, with not a formal staff. And I just want to let you know that what you are doing is really making a difference and changing the nonprofit area industry. And just to say thank you. And just one quick question is the funding, if we apply for this funding and if we get the funding, we can serve anybody, or we can stay like only Puget Sound communities? That's my question.
Thank you so much for the question and comments. Yeah, we have a long way to go as a community to really focus on these communities that are completely left out of a lot of funding streams. And so we know that it's an issue. And again, we know we're playing a very small part. It's a drop in the bucket. And hopefully by bringing in other women, we can change that over time. And I know a lot of other great organizations are working to change the culture of philanthropy as well, both here in Seattle community and around the US and around the world. So your question specifically about the services, the criteria that we set was the majority of services in the Puget Sound region. And so I think we would ask that, majority of services means most of your services in the Puget Sound region. I'm looking at Anna, if there's a clarification there, let me know. And so once that funding is available, it's unrestricted. We're not going to put ties on where the funding is needed. We know that if you're serving women in the Puget Sound region, but you have your greatest funding gap elsewhere, money's fungible. So that just seems like a silly restriction. So that's how I would answer that. And Anna, feel free to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the only thing that I would add is there is reasoning behind that. As we gather as 100 women, we wanted to make an impact close in our community. We understand that there's so many needs around the world and around our country, but we really wanted to focus sort of on our collective backyard. And so the way that we define Puget Sound is King, Pierce, and Snohomish counties, right? Okay, I always said the last one. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jeanette Creek-Bullock. I've been a teacher and principal in the Federal Way area for 37 years. I'm retired now and work with the organization that Abril mentioned, Kyrie's House, the foundation, and the child that was lost was my grandson. But my daughter founded the organization, and our goal was to help families. But within families, we have women, and so I'm finding with my background and still with COVID and things of that nature that homes are still without enough computers. And so it would transform some lives to have additional computer access in homes where there might be one where a student has it, the mom still doesn't have it, or the dad doesn't have the computer. So I think in addition to the direct services that we do provide, we'd like to look at this grant and to provide computer access that could help families and women go online to participate in online health programs, to participate in cultural events online because you can't get out now to do most of these things. So it would be looking at transforming the health. There's so much obesity in people of color, to be honest. And so I think that access would transform lives. It would transform families also, because if you had the whole family active and somewhere in their household just exercising together, evolving together in a different manner than just everybody sitting around and doing whatever they may choose to do. Also, they could participate in museums and other cultural events that are available, and especially during this time. So are those some thoughts that might give us access to this grant, or should we just maybe not apply? Thank you.
Yeah, again, I mean, I think I think I would suggest a follow-up via email. I think, the organizations that we're working with would, some of them certainly do provide direct services. So if, computers is an important part of the services that you provide, that's certainly acceptable and encouraged to be purchased as part of the grant making. I think where we would need to dig in a little bit is how are you working to resolve the underlying issues related to access? Is there something that you're doing to get people who don't have access to advocate, for instance? Is there some sort of culture change that you're looking for? And those are some of the things that we might ask to dig into that a little bit more. Would encourage a follow-up via email, and I can make sure that you and maybe Anna or Elizabeth can put the email just in the chat so everyone can see that clearly, because I see another question here on direct services and organization. Sorry, so I'm going to try to get at that a different way too. Surplus produce for use in meals they produce and or distribute to clients. Yeah, I guess I would answer it the same way. So is there something about the underlying system that's broken that you're working to change? And if so, if you could articulate what that is in your application and how you're working toward that, that would be one of the examples that we would like to learn more about. So I don't know if Anna or others who are on may want to share an example from one of the organizations that we funded last year that may come to mind.
Sure. So I mean, I think that one of the organizations that comes to mind could be, let's take East African Community Services as an example. EACS definitely does provide, direct services. When COVID hit, a lot of their communities were extremely hard hit by economic disadvantages. Lots of people lost jobs. And so, they basically did everything, including purchasing Safeway gift cards and distributing them to their communities. But I think that one of the reasons why we really gravitated towards that organization is that they're working with East African refugees to raise them from an immigrant status to basically middle-class Americans in one generation, and they do that on so many. Can you guys hear me still?
We can hear you. We just lost your background, so now we get to see.
Okay. Oh boy. You get to see the mess behind me. And so, sorry, I just lost my thought. Yes. So one of the reasons why we gravitate towards them is that they do that on so many different levels. So it is not just direct services they provide, but they really look to their community to see what is keeping them from actually, getting jobs and getting the right just advocacy at schools, for example. And so it's not just about providing, a food voucher. It is a lot more than that. It's actually working with the communities to understand what the root of the problems are and addressing them.
I have a question along these lines as well. My name is Drew Markham. I'm with Seattle School for Boys. Does Impact 100, I'm getting the impression that you almost have a preference for funding operations, more general operations versus programs. Is that true? Or is there?
Okay, I'll speak to this because I feel very passionately that you need operations to run programs. And so there should not be a distinction between the two in terms of what funders fund. So that's the short answer. And I think when you try to fit a grant application to support a specific program, it negates the fact that you should be paying for your staff and that you might need office space and that someone has to buy a computer now and again. Maybe it's every 7 years or whatever. Like, I'm sure mine could use an upgrade too. But I, as a nonprofit employee myself, like, I understand these barriers and want to make sure that those aren't getting in the way of people actually, serving their mission. So that's why I would say that you may hear more language around that, is because we understand the need for operations to be able to run good programs.
Very much appreciated. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions in the chat.
We're happy to hang out with you for a few minutes if you guys want to spend the time with us. Otherwise, we can give you back the rest of your hour. And, we do really take to heart this idea that you should be the ones telling us what you need. I know we have set some criteria, and that was a way for us to kind of boundary the limited support that we have, recognizing that it is a drop in the bucket and we have to make some hard choices. But we do hope to make this as painless as possible. One other thing, just before we start losing people, is that we are looking to increase the number of members to Impact 100 Seattle so that we can give more funding to nonprofits who need to, continue to serve this amazing community in which we live. So if you know anyone who may be interested, or you're actually interested in joining yourself, Anna, do you want to just say a word about the impact ships and the opportunity to join, and maybe the deadline, since I don't have that handy? Thanks.
Absolutely. So we're definitely looking to diversify our membership in terms of having just lots of different perspectives of people from all around the Puget Sound region. And so for people, for women who where the membership fee, which is $1,000, could be a barrier, we have this year, I think, 15 impact ships. And once again, the impact ship application is quite simple. And if you are a member that receives an impact ship, there's actually, those are not announced. So it is just a full membership. There is no difference between impact ship members and regular members. It is one woman, one vote, as we like to say, and we ask everyone to come as you are and give what you can, whether it is volunteer hours or money or support in so many different ways. And I think that people from all around, all different walks of life can just add a tremendous amount to our organization. So the impact ship deadline to apply is the 26th of March, and our membership deadline is March 31st. And really the reason is that we actually want to know how much money we will have to give away to our organizations in June.
Yeah, I'm going to ask one more time if anyone has a burning question they'd like us to answer. And feel free to raise your hand, throw it in the chat, or come off mute. I'm looking, I don't see any. And if not, thank you all for the work that you do. We know it's been an exhausting year, and we appreciate you. We appreciate all of the incredible organizations that we're so lucky to have in this community. And we hope that this next year is a great one for all of us, and we'll do the best we can to support the organizations that are on this call and who apply to this process. So thank you, and really look forward to meeting some of you, hopefully in the near future. Take care.